Dish Channel 219 on Newsmax TV, on America's Voice.news, throughout the nation on the John Fredericks Radio Network, also throughout the world on Nexus.org, on IRS, and in Mandarin later in the day on G News, G Media, GTV. I want to thank all of our distribution partners. Over 100 million views, over 8 million downloads on the podcast. Hashtag War Room Pandemic every day. The traffic into the newsletter, the news site. I want to thank you. And by the way, victory begets victory. You heard Rosemary Gibson in the first hour about manufacturing coming back to the United States. Big story in the NBC today, on the NBC news site, and also the New York Times. Hydroxychloroquine, the President of the United States is now taking it as a prophylactic. Another victory. We're going to talk later about the WHO, a letter, basically a heat-seeking missile from the President of the United States that exposes all the lies of the World Health Organization and how they're going to have to stand and I think remove the senior management there before the United States puts in another penny. Not going to finance it up to the level of China. Now I want to talk about other victories. Victory begets victory. Victory begets victory in economic warfare. One of the places it starts is in trade. It talks in jobs. That's what Rosemary Gibson, Peter Navarro have brought back manufacturing jobs on advanced manufacturing of drugs to the United States. It starts tomorrow in Richmond, Virginia. Also the capital markets. Remember, if you're sheltered at home right now, if you can't go into the water in New York City or in Manhattan Beach, California, if you've got mayors that are locking down, yes, there are obviously good calls being made and bad calls being made and questionable calls being made. But the reason you didn't see your mother on Mother's Day, the reason you didn't see the risen worship in the church of the risen Christ on Easter, the reason you didn't have Passover like you've had for 2,000 years, the reason you can't go to a mosque and do the commemoration of Ramadan and have your feast in the evening, the reason all of that is taking place is the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing, not the Chinese people. They're actually on our side. You know why? They're the biggest victims. The key to this is economic warfare. As they say in unrestricted warfare, it's information war, which Mr. Raheem Kassam goes through every day, and also economic warfare of the Chinese Communist Party. The way to counter that, it's a hot war, not a cold war. It's a hot war. The way to counter that is to start fighting through economic warfare. And one of the leading voices in that, as Rosemary Gibson was to the drugs, our next guest, Kevin Freeman, has the Economic War Room show. He's written books on this over the last 10 years, 15 years. He's an expert in this, one of the top financial guys around, really understands this. There are victories now taking place on the capital markets, specifically with the registration and listings of these Chinese companies. Why is this important? Because they're taking capital, they're taking your pension fund money and financing the Chinese Communist Party. And as importantly, they're taking capital away from American entrepreneurs. Okay, Kevin now joins us. Kevin, thank you very much for joining us today on War Room Pandemic.
Great, thanks. Good to be here.
I want to talk about this deregistration of the coffee company in the Starbucks of China, the deregistration of that, what took place, why it is, and also this movement, the letter. You're part of the Committee on the Present Danger. This letter that we sent to the head of the SEC. You've seen Roger Robinson on there. This whole thing of NASDAQ's coming out with tighter listings. What's happening in the capital markets to choke down the Chinese Communist Party?
You know, the big breakthrough came when the president realized that the thrift savings plan was about to invest in Chinese equities. And when that got stopped, it broke open everything, because we have Larry Kudlow, who is beloved on Wall Street, writing a letter to the Secretary of Labor telling him the president does not want investment into Chinese companies from our pension funds, from our servicemen and women, and so forth.
Hold on. We got to be blunt. And Larry Kudlow, I love Larry Kudlow. I've known him for 20 years, a fabulous guy, but he has not been a supporter of this. He's been part of that Wall Street faction that said, oh, no, you got to let them have access. It'll hurt the market, etc. For Kudlow, as head of NEC, to flip and actually to be the author of the letter is huge, because now we're flipping the Wall Street guys. It's people like you and Roger Robinson and others that have been just the warriors in this.
Yeah, well, Wall Street was highly conflicted because they earned so much fees from China. I mean, you look at Alibaba, it was the largest IPO in history to date, you know, when it happened, $25 billion back in late 2014. Wall Street has been fully overcommitted to China, and you see it with Larry Fink and BlackRock and so forth. But yes, when Kudlow was the guy that wrote the letter, and he wrote it with O'Brien, who represents national security, you had both national security and you had the Economic Council saying to the Secretary of Labor, Scalia, no, we don't want to do this. And Scalia immediately said, I agree. And fortunately, we won that battle. But the logic that was applied there, the logic of Kudlow's letter that, why we shouldn't be funding these risky Chinese companies where they're not meeting our accounting standards, applies for everybody. It's not just the thrift savings plan, but every person who's invested in the markets. No one wants to be investing in the next Enron. And we've seen real practical examples where Chinese accounting has just turned out to be fraudulent. And it was given a pass by the SEC.
Talk to us about this, the Starbucks of China. I think it's pronounced Lucan's Coffee, that was going to build, 9,000 spots in China and really become the CCP's competitor to Starbucks. Walk us through the case study of that.
Yeah, well, Lucan Coffee just was fraudulently stating where the revenues were. It's no different from Enron that we had here and other places. The big difference, though, they were given a pass. They were not breaking the law necessarily by not submitting the Chinese companies to audit. And so here they were just claiming that they were growing and they had more revenues that they did. It's just a complete, it's a sham in terms of how much money they were making and how much market share they were taking.
And they lost. I mean, the losses here, they came out, I think it was Muddy Waters. The two guys that short these Chinese stocks after doing a lot of analysis. One is the team over at Muddy Waters. The other is Dan David and the guys. We've had Dan on the show a number of times. And these guys, it's brutal the way they go through these companies. And what's so shocking is that the fraud is so obvious upon hindsight and just no regulatory effort whatsoever. Any American entrepreneur do that would be in prison for 30 years if they did this. It was so outrageous. Talk about this letter that you were one of the architects of that went to Jay Clayton, former head of Sullivan and Cromwell, that's now chairman of the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. What does this letter say, and why is this letter important?
Well, the letter's important because there is one group of companies that have been given a pass on meeting our accounting standards. And I was only shocked to find out yesterday exactly why that pass was given. I just assumed Wall Street had pushed for it, but it's more insidious than that. But one group of companies, which are Chinese companies, and the letter is pretty simple. It's China's not necessarily our friend. That they've been given a pass by the SEC. They don't have to conform to American accounting standards. They don't have to submit their auditors to inspection. We don't get to really peer behind that. The Chinese companies have claimed that their earnings are a state secret, and they, by law, have been restricted in China from sharing them. So we wrote a letter, a group of us wrote a letter and said to Jay Clayton, look, if the thrift savings plan should not hold Chinese shares for these reasons, why are these companies allowed to be listed and registered on American stock exchanges? And the reality of it is that we have no problem with any company anywhere that abides by our rules being registered and being listed on our exchanges. We have a serious problem when any company is flouting those rules or been given a special pass to where you can't do the investigation. You mentioned Dan David. I mean, if you've seen the movie The China Hustle, many of these Chinese companies that have used reverse mergers or other means of getting on the exchange or just listing over the counter, and to the tune of maybe a $1 to $3 trillion. I don't know the exact amount. Nobody really does know the exact amount, but it's as much as $3 trillion when you add the debt instruments in. They've just sucked up an enormous amount of American capital, and we don't know what we're buying. We don't know what we're getting. And the best of them would be something like an Alibaba, where when you buy shares of that, you don't actually get shares in Alibaba, you get shares in a variable interest entity in the Cayman Islands Corporation. So we wrote a letter to Jay Clayton of the SEC and said, look, this has got to stop. These companies either have to meet our standards or they have to be kicked out like any other company would be. I mean, this is potential outright fraud, and it's potentially perpetrated by the Chinese government because every one of these companies has to serve the Chinese Communist Party by law. And so we said it's time to put a stop. You demand, in a reasonable period of time, demand that they meet our accounting standards or remove them completely from the capital markets.
Let me ask you a question here. This is shifting slightly, but staying within the same realm. We saw the news yesterday that a top Disney exec went over to become the CEO for TikTok, and Missouri's great Senator Josh Hawley effectively said, "Assume the position because we're going to start making life a little bit more challenging for you." Josh tweeted out yesterday, interesting. TikTok tells us, New York Times, that it is not really a Chinese company because parent company ByteDance Talk Incorporated is in the Caymans. I got it. So TikTok and ByteDance Talk are based in China, do business in the U.S., and seek tax shelter in the Caymans. Sounds totally legit. So that was Senator Hawley. Where do you think things go with TikTok? Because we've discussed this a number of times on the show, and a lot of parents around the country are concerned about it.
Well, I'm concerned about TikTok. That's one thing I want my daughters to use in terms of social media. It's very popular. Go back to this Cayman Islands thing, though. Since when did the Cayman Islands become a corporate powerhouse? They control Alibaba, they control TikTok. No, there's no way. These are all Chinese companies. They're all subject to the Chinese Communist Party control. TikTok has the ability to spy on people through the app. It is just not something that we want to have my family involved in. I can't imagine that if you pull a Disney executive, it is, hey, we opened Shanghai Disney. We have film distribution rights here in China. They're using every bit of their corporate influence and economic warfare influence to achieve their agenda, and that's just sadly a fact. And many American companies have rolled over to that truth.
Kevin, give people access. How do people get access to your show? How do they get access to your Twitter feed? You're a member of the Committee on the Present Danger. You're one of the go-to players on economic warfare. He's just like Rosemary Gibson. She's been talking about Chinese drugs forever. Now it's her moment. Kevin Freeman has been talking about economic warfare forever. Now's his moment. How do people get access to you?
Economicwarroom.com, and we just published a full battle plan. We call it a field order, where people can learn everything they need to learn about Chinese equities on our stock exchanges and in our markets. And that's Field Order 01. And you go to economicwarroom.com, click on the link, download the battle plans. It's free. It's like a 30-page PDF document that explains in detail all of the things we're talking about, shows you how to get to Committee on the Present Danger, shows you how to sign the petition if you agree with us. You can get access to the J. Clayton letter, everything. So everything starts at economicwarroom.com, and then look for battle plans and look for Field Order 01.
We're going to link to it today on the site and also over the National Pulse. You're a great patriot, sir, an American hero. Kevin Freeman, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Steve.
These are guys that are making it happen. A Committee on the Present Danger. I'm proud to be one of the founders of the Rejuvenation, along with Brian Kennedy, Frank Gaffney, Roger Robinson, others. We initiated this after the Cold War with Scoop Jackson and those guys, the Committee on the Present Danger, the original one that gave so much information and backing to Ronald Reagan. When he came in, Ronald Reagan said, hey, they're an evil empire, and how about this plan, Henry Kissinger and all you other guys in the establishment? How about this? We win, they lose. That freed 1 billion people in the captive nations of what was then the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. But guess what? There's 1.4 billion people that are going to free themselves, and they're going to do it with the support of the United States of America. Remember, this is what the whole enchilada is about, okay? Everything else is the noise. This is the signal. Kevin Freeman is one of the American heroes, one of the American patriots doing it. We're going to return in a minute. The World Health Organization, we're making them famous. Dr. Tedros, next on War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Remember, this show originated as War Room Impeachment back in October because we didn't think people were focused enough on what was really going down on the scam that was impeachment. It was going to be a much bigger deal than people thought. And it turned out it was a much bigger deal, as they actually did impeach the 45th president of the United States. And thank God everybody was able to get organized, and that thing was beaten down in the Senate, and we moved on to another day. That day happened to be a global pandemic, and now we're in the middle of it. I want to, by the way, and part of War Room Impeachment was to make them famous. The Dirty 30, those are 30 congressmen in districts that President Trump won in 2016 that flipped and Nancy Pelosi is the reason the master political strategist is, by the way, I don't know if she's master political strategist because last night I think she did something in calling President Trump morbidly obese that actually there's not many. I'm not a person that says, hey, you crossed the line. I think that actually technically crossed the line.
I think it did. And just so the audience is clear, Steve has specifically told us we're not allowed to say Nancy Pelosi now do X and fill in the blank of a morbidly obese Democratic elected official. But you
so
guys,
we can't do Jerry Nadler.
No, and we're
Stop.
That didn't work out for me last time. I called Jerry Nadler morbidly obese. But
take his Twitter away.
Yeah, exactly. Take that away. But no. Otherwise, we'd be going and calling out. But that Nancy Pelosi just crossed the line, and the fact that Anderson's giggling and. I just thought she clowned herself.
Well, it just shows you how hypocritical they are. First of all, what is Skeletor doing telling Donald Trump he needs to stop eating?
Oh, wow. Okay.
When they go low, we go lower.
The Dirty 30, we made them famous, the districts during the impeachment.
Wait, I thought we were going to do live BMI checks of everyone here.
That's coming next week after I lose another 5 when I'm below the 30. I'm below the cut. Now we've made another person famous. Oh, one thing I want to get for Kevin Freeman. John Solomon in Just the News did a magnificent story. I want to get to that in a couple of segments. We got Brian Kolfage, by the way. Next segment coming on, talking about the wall and the pandemic. Brian Kolfage, Rebuild the Wall, the veteran who's done such a magnificent job there. Here on Making It, we got to talk about Solomon's got the buried lead about what Kevin Freeman was talking about on this. Why are we actually have this deal with NASDAQ, these Chinese companies? And remember, why are we on these Chinese? Every company is controlled by the CCP. Alibaba, Jack Ma, that guy, that little flake, the little Michael Jackson thing, they finally admitted he's just a school teacher they kind of picked up. He's a total phony. Remember the CCP forever? The guy in back was the guy that owns the Brooklyn Nets. Right? That guy's hardcore CCP. Okay? All of this money is, remember, $1 to $3 trillion of American capital. And that means pension funds and insurance companies, institutional money, which is your money, deplorables. I want you to embrace this. $1.3 trillion not only has gone to finance the CCP companies, they skim it right off the top. This is why Wan Shan and Xi are so wealthy. And Wall Street takes the fees. This is why they want the scam to continue. But think of the opportunity cost. Think if American entrepreneurs had that $1 to $3 trillion. Think of the paradise. This would have been another $3 trillion to American entrepreneurs. American entrepreneurs.
Breaking news. Pew Research. We've talked about their information. This literally is. They just tweeted this out 2 minutes ago. Roughly 2/3 of Americans, 66%, say they have an unfavorable view of China, the most negative rating since Pew Research Center began asking this question in 2005. They continue, the share of Americans by age who say globalization in the past few years has been a good thing for the U.S. 18 to 29-year-olds, 56%, 30 to 49, 49%, 50 to 64, 44%, and anyone over 65, it's down to 41%.
For you 18 to 29-year-olds, our next mission is to make sure you just understand, you got to come to your own conclusion. Your reason you're a serf and you don't own anything and you're not going to own anything is because of globalization. And we're not saying we're not part of an interconnected world. We are. But you have to start looking at it as a nation state. That's what Rosemary Gibson in Richmond, Virginia tomorrow, when they start hiring for high value added jobs with advanced manufacturing, you're going to understand the 18 to 29-year-olds why the future is with economic nationalism. Okay, I want to now turn.
Yeah.
No, but we're going to make Tedros. We've made Tedros famous from very early on because we realized they lied. The reason people are dead, we now have over 90,000 American citizens have died because of this. This is because it's CCP, but their accomplice before the fact was Tedros and World Health. On the 12th of January of 2020, they put out the press release that talked about they had been in contact with Chinese medical officials, no human-to-human transmission or community spread. Then on the 14th, Jack Maxey picked up the original tweet. They tweeted out, and boy, does Tedros wish they could take that tweet back now. Okay? They can't because they lied. They lied, and people died. Now we're going to make him famous. The President of the United States has sent a heat-seeking missile to Geneva. Remember, when we talk about the United Nations, we have Ambassador Bremberg, who ran Domestic Policy Council for us, old school conservative. Okay, Geneva is the hotbed of where all the operations of the UN are. Right, it's Geneva where that is the swamp. That's the United Nations swamp. Geneva. Okay, and President Trump sent this. Let's go through this letter because heads are blowing up in Geneva right now because Donald Trump said, "Hey, how about this? No money."
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the comprehensive nature of this letter is what stood out to me first. Right? This is not the letter to was it Chuck Schumer a couple of months ago? The missive. This is detailed, and it's damning. It goes through timeline. You see this, on the January the 14th, this on January the 21st, this on January the 28th, this everything we've said on the show.
This is what I'm so proud about. This you read this letter. Hashtag war and pandemic. Anybody's listening to this show will sit there, well, yeah, I remember that. That's right. They got this. They didn't forget bang, bang, bang. The checklist. They went right down the checklist, but that's because the reason we covered it, it's so damning.
Well, the thing is, this is really like a charging document. This is not one of Donald Trump's regular, I hashed this out with David Bossie, over a cheeseburger at McDonald's at the Oval Office.
Where did that come from?
This was created by a legal team because what we are seeing
Bingo.
here, we are setting up the future Nuremberg trial that Mr. Bannon has spoken of many times.
This is an A+ breakup letter.
Here's how you know it landed as well.
Yeah.
They haven't responded yet.
No, because, hey, you know why? He's absolutely correct. This was not just tightly argued. This was drafted by not just White House counsel. I think maybe some DOJ. They'd had some heavy-duty legal guys. It's like an indictment almost, right?
Every word was vetted. This was not Donald Trump's normal exclamation point dash,
I keep saying, when we get to the Nuremberg trial and CCP, and we know this gets translated, you're going to have the Nuremberg trial. We're going to have a Nuremberg trial in Wuhan, and the citizens of Wuhan are going to sit in as the jury for the rest of the world, okay? Tedros, you're going to be in the docket with them, right? You're going to be in the docket with them. You're just like these guys in these other countries around Germany back in the 1930s. You're going to be in the docket, right? You're not going to. You're the Quislings, so you're not going to be able to run away. Tedros, you're the worst person on earth. You should be charged criminally. Okay, you should be charged criminally for what you did. We want to get all the emails. We also want to get all the payments. We want to see your Swiss bank accounts. Okay, all of it, dude. We know you're a running dog for the Chinese Communist Party. And here's the beauty of that letter. It lays it out that he is a running. This is how you charge a running dog.
It is quote. It is clear the repeated missteps by you and your organization in responding to the pandemic have been extremely costly for the world. The only way forward for the World Health Organization is if it can actually demonstrate independence from China. And this is the sucker punch, right? The real hit to Tedros. Because let's face it, there is no way that they can demonstrate independence from China. It is a brilliant letter because it actually traps them in the crime, and the crime is collusion and collaboration with the Chinese Communist Party.
If you want to see also, and this is why it's so important for the hashtag War Room Pandemic crowd, we got to hear your voice. You got to retweet what we put out. You got to talk about the show. You got to push it out, and here's why. Compare that to the letter that Tucker Carlson talked about on Friday, which was a weak tea, and hey, we're still going to support you to the level of China and everything like that. Remember, there's a fight, I can tell you this, there's a fight in the White House and the administration every day about the direction of this thing. And you have the hawks and maybe the super hawks, and you have the accommodationist, okay? This example shows you the power of the hawks and the super hawks. Tedros and these guys just got punched in the mouth. It is zero possibility that can run this thing going forward. That just cannot happen.
One thing I want to throw in here on the WHO, and we're properly talking about this because of the president's letter, there's so much bad stuff that these guys are up to on a daily basis. Financial Times has a really good story this morning. It's in the broader context of the U.S. backing away from the WHO moves. Just read the opening sentence. The U.S. is preparing to publicly disassociate itself from language in a WHO resolution that will back the right of poor countries to ignore patents in order to gain access access to a COVID-19 vaccine or treatment. So, number of things here. They basically want to say, and obviously if the U.S. develops this, we're going to help other countries. Look at what Trump's doing to give away ventilators and other PPE and supplies as we're able to go and help. But imagine just flipping the switch and, okay, Zambia, here's a recipe we put together. Feel free to start cooking it in your backyard. Okay, first of all, this is going to lead to just giving away these patents for poorer countries to knock off. Going to lead to people getting killed.
Absolutely.
I mean, just to be clear.
Question.
But also, too, who's the WHO to come in and say, hey, American company, sorry, not sorry, you no longer own this patent?
Underwritten by American tax dollars. Okay,
and this is another dodge to cover the Chinese, because you have to remember in early February, the Chinese declared that they were just going to declare the remdesivir patent unenforceable, and they were going to create their own patent. So this is the World Health Organization retrospectively protecting them again.
They got another problem. 100 million more in lockdown.
In China, we're going to get to that next segment. Remember, Dr. Ben Carson, new head of the World Health Organization, next on War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Dr. Tedros, you can run, but you can't hide. Okay, you're trying to, it's all happy talk now. Too late. It's not about your talk. It's about your action. You're a complete, total disgrace, debacle. That scalp is coming. Dr. Ben Carson, if the United States puts in another penny, Dr. Ben Carson, a brilliant brain surgeon at Johns Hopkins, a great man, a humanitarian, someone with a big heart and a big brain, and just common sense and judgment and just good old decency, represents the best of the United States of America. He's got to be the next head of the World Health Organization before we put in another penny.
When you say you can run but you cannot hide, remember that what's the number one of the 36 stratagems?
What is that? You can run but you can't hide?
It's cross the ocean without the emperor noticing, right? This is the old Chinese
yes.
stratagems, and it's basically hide in plain sight. And that's what Tedros is doing. He's hiding in plain sight. He's up there again this morning, giving a load of happy talk, saying, we're going to double down the plan. That's why before the break I said they've got another problem, which is the 100 million in lockdown in the Northeast region. We'll get to that in a moment. I
want to go, before we get Brian Kolfage on, talking about the wall, talking about another victory. Victory begets victory. This was Victory Day today, folks. They're small, but they're meaningful. And actually, they're not that small, but they lead to bigger things. Talk about Tedros.
Well, Tedros has not officially answered the president's indictment letter. He has made some.
That's because he's in the process of retaining counsel.
Right.
Okay.
He has made some ridiculous platitudes on Twitter this morning that go right to the heart of his hypocrisy. He says, we'll continue bringing together leading experts from around the world to develop technical advice based on the best science. We'll continue driving research and development. We'll continue to keep the world informed and give people and communities the information they need to keep themselves and each other safe. He's just not getting it, Steve. I think maybe he's losing it, perhaps.
Tedros, when you went to Beijing and kowtowed to these guys on the 12th and then the 14th, you had at that moment, that was the defining moment of you as a person and a man, and a defining moment for the World Health Organization. And it was not a small miss. It's a bald-faced lie. A bald-faced lie that exacerbated all this agony, all this death, all this economic destruction. And yes, sir, you're going to be held accountable. First, you're going to be removed as head of the World Health Organization. But, brother, that's just the start of your troubles, okay? Remember what Donald Trump said. Nothing is inevitable. That means human action and through human agency. That's how things happen. You had your moment of human agency. And we're going to find out how much money you took. Okay? Brother, you're on the payrolls, no doubt about that, okay? And we're going to find all that out. Nothing's going to be hidden. It's all going to come clear.
One important thing, Steve, is there are a lot of other professional experts at the World Health Organization, and whatever they know, they better bring it now because there's no reason to hang from the same tree as Tedros. Anybody out there who's got information that the world needs to know, I'd be first in line to reveal it if I were you.
You need some whistleblowers. We definitely need whistleblowers. We need people to come forward. This is all going to start coming out now, and before the United States puts in a penny to the World Health Organization, there's got to be a change of management at the top. Okay, let's now go to, we're going to get back, we got China, we got so much to get through. Let's go to the border. Brian Kolfage, one of the most heroic young men in, I think, modern American history, a wounded veteran of the Iraq War, an American patriot, on his own volition, took on to build the wall in the darkest days when President Trump was being crushed and the money was being cut off to rebuild the wall. We've built now, I think, 4.5 miles down in basically New Mexico near El Paso, and also this magnificent 1 mile of wall, a half a mile of wall to stop the cartels from coming through right up the side of a mountain. Army Corps of Engineers, everybody said it couldn't be built. Brian Kolfage built it with the team. Also now on the Rio Grande River, where they said they couldn't be built. Well, hey, it's built. The butterfly woman tried to stop it, but guess what? Wall beats butterflies, okay? And now, Tommy, I want to get into the whole thing. What's happening with the wall, why it's important for this pandemic, particularly Tommy Fisher, one of the partners in all of this, is now got a huge contract to build additional wall. So, Brian, get our folks up to speed of what's going on.
Well, President Trump has been doing a great job, and what most Americans haven't been paying attention to is that he's ramped up the speed of these border walls being built during the COVID-19 pandemic. And now they're going back and saying they're going to build possibly 450 miles by the end of this year in 2020, which is phenomenal. It's great. And what a lot of Americans also may have neglected to realize is that there's still a crisis going on the border today. It has not stopped. There was a murder just south of our border wall in El Paso. An entire family was wiped out a couple nights ago. And we're talking women and children in Juarez, Mexico, sorry. And the crisis down there is still going on. There was about 160 deaths from COVID in Juarez, but over 640 murders alone just this year. So you can see with those numbers that the drug cartels are still controlling the borders. They're ramping up attacks. They're still bringing drugs into this country. And it's why we still need this border wall. The problem is never going to go away unless we build that wall and get it done. And President Trump, congrats to him because he stayed true to this and he's been drilling it home. He's been nailing it, and that wall has been going up faster than ever. So congratulations, President.
Brian, I want to turn. President Trump is clearly, we partnered with Tommy early on. We saw that, and Tommy Fisher did an incredible job, built the thing for half the price he could have built it for going up that hill or that mountain in El Paso, Texas, and got it done. Remember, we built the entire thing over Memorial Day weekend a year ago. I want to go to I want to talk about Tommy Fisher. Just got a big contract. Talk about Fisher. Talk about what he's doing down in Yuma and in California and Arizona.
Well, I think once Tommy Fisher built our wall in El Paso, the government really noticed about how incredible that wall was and how well it was built. And it put Tommy on the map. It put him on the map because they knew he was the real deal, that he did something that the government wasn't able to do. And frankly, that's why he's now getting these contracts, the government walls for President Trump. And he's doing a great job. And he just got that $1.2 billion contract to build a very long stretch of wall in Arizona. And it's only because of his hard work and dedication that he's getting this done. And, We Build the Wall obviously chose the right builder, and we chose Tommy because his love for the country, not just because he was a big contractor, but he helped us out. And now, karma's coming around. He's taking care of the country, and he's going to secure America. He's doing a great job. And he can build it faster than anybody is what is proven. And I think also that's another reason why he's getting that job done.
Look, you can't totally lock down this pandemic until you lock down the southern border. We just need the southern border. We need the wall. We need security. We need border security. And this is for the people to break the backs of the cartel. This is for the citizens of Mexico. This is for the citizens of the whole country, but particularly the citizens of Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico that live down near the wall. It's just become, the cartels are just out of control. So border security equals pandemic security. I want to pivot. You've also, look, we had Rosemary Gibson on earlier about Flow, about this new plant that's being built in Richmond, Virginia. You've also started America First Medical. You're very focused as a patriot on bringing jobs back to the United States. Tell me what you're working on.
Well, when this whole pandemic started, we noticed there was a supply chain issue with everything being manufactured in China. And this was back in January. We were watching your show, and that's when we first realized that there's going to be a big problem with these masks. And we immediately went into action and started figuring out how we could bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. And that's what we're doing right now. We fired up America First Medical. We're going to start manufacturing masks in the United States, in Florida, 1 million masks per day in our factory, and giving these back to hospitals, civilians. And we're working with NIOSH and some other big companies to get approval on our factory. We're going to be having over 100 jobs coming back to the States that we're stealing back from China that American workers are going to be able to have. And right now, this is when we need all our workforce working. There's a lot of people unemployed. This is the perfect time for other entrepreneurs to go out there and steal back these jobs from China and get the American workforce working again.
Brian, I want to thank you. What's your Twitter feed? By the way, if you want to see a woke Twitter feed, it's Brian Kolfage, okay? He's owning the libs every day. What's your Twitter handle, Brian?
It's just my name, Brian Kolfage, all together, at Brian Kolfage.
Brother,
BrianKolfage.
You're a great American patriot, a great man, and we love you here at the show, and everybody gets to know you, loves you. So thanks. Just keep hitting it for the American people and for the border and for jobs, all of it. Thank you so much for joining us.
From 2020.
He's owning the libs. Bro. Owning the libs. Okay. I don't know. I think he's worse than Posobiec as far as owning the libs. I mean, because
Brian, up there.
Brian lives for this. Okay. Talk to me about China.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read from the Bloomberg.com article so that nobody out there trying to trip us up all the time can say, "Oh, you know, they're
this is one of the biggest. This is actually, I would think, one of the biggest, most important business and information news sites. This goes up on the Bloomberg terminal, which is on every trader's desk in the world.
There is a significant amount of accountability for if they get something wrong. Let's put it that way. So we're talking about 1,400 miles away from Wuhan, about 2,200 kilometers, just so you understand the size.
Would be from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, approximately, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Bloomberg is now reporting that about 108 million people in this Chinese northeast region are being put back into lockdown. That's Wuhan's, by the way, lockdown conditions, severe lockdown conditions, as a, quote, new and growing cluster of infections causes a backslide in the nation's return to normal. Now, this is popping this morning, but I understand that we've mentioned it on the show, and we've mentioned what was happening in Harbin and what's been going on the Russian border and why Russia's been taking this new outbreak seriously also. But this also now is stretching further afield. There are several provinces named that I won't pretend to be a geographical expert on China, but we're talking about these northeastern provinces and slightly below, Jilin province specifically that we're looking at now, where you have about 125 recent local cases, but where authorities are saying that actually the contact level amongst those people has been high enough that they are concerned about a mass outbreak, thousands upon thousands of potential cases there, which is leading to intense lockdowns in these areas. Interestingly enough, you're seeing things that we saw at the beginning of the first outbreak here as well. There is the potential for quite a big cover-up having taken place already here, because the things I'm reading, and I'm looking at the Chinese news sources, the CCP's own state media sources, and other reporting on this, is that some are saying that the knowledge of this goes back to at least the 7th of May on this. Well, now that is 11 days ago, and it's only now just popping up in Western media. We also note that yesterday, CGTN, which we often bang on about here on the show, reported that 5 officials in Jilin, in this city in the northeast, have been removed from their posts
A tell.
A very, very important tell, as the Chinese Communist Party dispatches very senior people to the Jilin province. So Chinese Vice Premier Sun Chunlan went to the Jilin province, I think it was over the course of the weekend. You're now seeing a very, very significant potential outbreak here. And the thing I want people to take away from this is, while the WHO is claiming to be transparent and on top of this, and China is claiming to be transparent on top of this, we haven't heard a thing about this on the national news. We haven't heard a thing about this from Tedros himself. The WHO not advising anyone. We're keeping an eye on it.
War Room Pandemic. We'll return in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room, Tuesday, May 19th, the year of our Lord 2020. Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Stephen K. Bannon, and Raheem Kassam. I hijacked the microphone in the break because I wanted to bring you guys important information we had just a couple of days ago on this show. Jerome Riviere, one of the members of the European Parliament for the Rassemblement National. This is the Marine Le Pen, if you listen to the Financial Times and The Economist, the far-right party in France.
Front National.
But really, the populist nationalist, the party that is looking for a big breakthrough in France's next presidential elections. Now, a lot of people have recognized that Emmanuel Macron, since the election in the parliamentary majority that he received in 2017, has been at the forefront of defending the globalist project. Set himself up, what did he call himself? Jupiterian. Set himself up as this leader. And of course, remember, as Angela Merkel was on her way down in the polls and on her way out of leadership in Germany, the Newsweeks of the world and the Time magazines of the world and the New York Times and all these guys lauded Emmanuel Macron as the last defender of globalism in the Western world.
And the anti-Trump.
And, of course, the anti-Trump. And people will remember that Emmanuel Macron went to great lengths to try and woo President Trump and actually try and bring him over to his side of the football ideologically and philosophically. To some victories early on for Macron, but he has been plagued ever since. He's had the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest protests, week in, week out, all across France. The merger of the populist left and populist right on the streets of Paris, on the streets of France.
Le Pen beat him in the European parliamentary elections by, 2 points? A point in the European parliamentary elections?
Yeah, and remember, Macron sought to set himself apart from France's historical political parties. He set up this new one, En Marche, go forward, or walk together. However, En Marche seems to have been stopped in its tracks a little bit, as we've learned over the last couple of hours.
By a pandemic?
Quite a communist name for a party, isn't it? En Marche, Forward. That seems to be the name of almost every communist newspaper on planet Earth.
This was Macron's thing, was to try and unite the centrists with the left and try En Marche to get them all to walk together. It hasn't really worked. He suffered from the pension reform stuff. He suffered a lot of things there. And the reason it's very important is this is the one of the critical areas for globalism is France. One of the critical things that it needs to keep France within the European Union. It needs to keep the European Union, the euro going, and it needs people like Macron to survive. Well, overnight we learned that 7 lawmakers from En Marche have joined this new group in the French Parliament called Ecology, Democracy and Solidarity, bringing En Marche's total in the French Parliament down to 288 of 577. That means they no longer have a functioning absolute majority, and Macron has used that majority to push through things that were potentially unpopular, but he needed them done anyway to impact it, to have his agenda pushed through. That can no longer happen. This is a big deal. Now, it's not as big a deal as the Ecology, Democracy and Solidarity group wanted it to be. They expected 58 people to be a part of that. They now have, I think, about 17 in total, and it puts Macron on the back foot because he now has to rely on this other coalition partner that he's got, Modem, the democratic movement that he's got this agreement with. Just one thing I need to quote from one of the MPs who has left. Quote, "I do not trust this government anymore." And that will resonate throughout Paris, throughout France. It will resonate throughout the European Union as you see Macron, who has tried to govern as this kind of centrist, left, technocratic savior of globalism.
Well, let's talk about this. The Brexit and 2016 Trump victory inextricably linked.
Mm-hmm.
The Tory victory on Brexit 2 inextricably linked to 2020. Okay, you saw the Brits finally made the break. Okay, the continent is also inextricably linked. This does not take the populist nationalist movement really to the next level because this new group is kind of disturbing. It's like Fauci. It's like a emerging political movement of the Faucis, the CDC, and the politicians. This looks like and feels like what's being pushed by Rachel Maddow, what's being pushed by MSNBC and CNN every night. Is it not a technocratic, scientific, what they call evidence-based party, quote unquote?
Where did you get that from?
It's just you in the break. Got to lift it. Got to be the first one out there, remember.
Well, that's exactly what it seems like. And we're obviously going to keep a close eye on this new group. The Ecology, Democracy and Solidarity Party looks entirely to be sort of a technocratic, scientific, political party. Effectively, Jack, jump in here on this as well. This looks to me like science as an ideology now, science as a political party.
Well, let's remember what other political parties in recent history looked at themselves as science-based parties. Let's look at the crazy nightmare that came out of both the fascist organizations in Europe, both the Italians and the Germans. Remember all of these...
in the Soviet Union.
And the Soviets. All of these horrors that they brought on mankind, remember... They were scientifically based.
The CCP, remember the CCP is the atheistic, materialistic. When you see the CCP, what they laud over the Chinese people, this is why Pottinger's May 4th speech was so powerful. It tied the spiritual and freedom beliefs of the West to the deep-seated spiritual yearning of the Chinese people historically. Totally counter to the atheistic, materialistic, scientific materialism of what communism's always been. Remember, they always try to take, and here's the thing, it was always phony to begin with, right? They get in back of the faux numbers. You don't see that. But now you're seeing, and this is why this thing in France is so important. Remember, the French, they know something about revolutions, right? The Chinese built, when that famous scene, when Kissinger and Zhou Enlai are sitting there and they go, Kissinger says, what's your thoughts on the French Revolution? This is 1972, he says, too early to tell, right? They look to France. Remember, most of the guys in Deng Xiaoping and all these were all educated in France. They always looked to France as the thing that broke with the church. The French Revolution broke with the spiritualism, broke with Christianity, broke with it as a cultural force. This is why France, you always have to look at France. This is a major development that's going to take shape in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead.
And you are going to see this, called for more over here as well. I'm sure we'll see it across the European Union. You're going to
start seeing this in the United States. This is what's being pushed on television every night. This is CNN and MSNBC. The political ideology in back of this is exactly what you're seeing popping in France.
Great
now.
Listener feedback from Howard Rourke says Nuremberg called the courtroom is available.
Love it. Hashtag War and Pandemic. Want to hear your voice. Remember, you are winning. Victory begets victory. We're going to have more victories to talk about tomorrow. 10 o'clock. Pete Heggs is with us tomorrow.